Okay, we're in the middle of Siman. Hey, we're up to Sid Gimel, the halachis of candle lighting, Shabbos candles. Mitzvah mina mufchar. The best way to do this is lahadlik b'shemen zayis, to use olive oil specifically. Specifically, you have to also know that in those days, as we'll see soon, things operated differently. In other words, that the access to raw materials and different ingredients were different. So their best candles would be shemen zayis. Now, in general, we do have that there's some like beeswax and things like that. Kabbalistically, has an inyan for certain things that we like to use it for when we can. Like we know the shamish and Avdallah, different times that we prefer beeswax. Some of it is Kabbalistic, but over here that's not brought down. So over here it says shemen zayis would be number one. The gam shemen arago benenu shakrein shemen prachim, which is bloomin oil, also kosher. He says another thing also would be what was commonly used then, and he lived in Hungary. He says that would be what's called bloomin oil. Now, blumen, for those that know, is in Yiddish, is a flower, blumen, right? Like the name Bluma. It's a family name. Yeah, probably, yeah. Blumenfeld would mean a field of flowers. So that's where they got the name. Maybe they had a field where they sold flowers. Blumenfeld. So blumen oil would be oil from flowers. Now, what's oil from flowers? It could be canola oil or things like that are basically not coming from olives or things like that. So one second. So that would also be okay. But if you're using other types of oils, there are some that you should not use. Now, why should you not use them? So the simple answer would be there's two things. Number one, some of them they had a putrid smell. Second time we use that word today. So putrid smell would mean sometimes you come into places and they smell really badly. So for our Hanukkah Menorah, we used to use, for example, the public lightings, we would use the tiki torches. The problem is that the fuel for the tiki torches was like to keep away mosquitoes and everything. It was oily and smelly, and it was disgusting. So finally, we ended up getting like paraffin, which is like from the kosher companies, which is basically clear white liquid that burns beautifully and it doesn't smell, it's odorless and all that. So there are times that the smell of the fuel could be very disturbing. And if it's very disturbing, then the problem is that you're going to walk out of the room. And the whole idea of why you want them is that you're supposed to have light that you could, not Shalom Bayis. Over here would be more of the Einik Shabbos part, that you want to sit by the Suda and be able to enjoy it. No, Shalom Bayis says that if you're there and you bump into something, so that's another story. But over here, our concern is that you're not going to want to eat by the light, which means you won't be honoring Shabbos with the Suda by the candle because you're going to be so disgusted and nauseous from the smell. So it's not going to be okay. So number one, when it comes to the fuel, there's a preferred fuel and a not preferred fuel. Number two, the gam, hapsila, same thing when it comes to the wicks. Yahader, it's preferable. Shetehei mitzemer gefen, it should be from cotton, because that's the best, smoothest type of flame. A pishtan, or maybe it could also use, well, it's flax, but here it's the add from the Alter Rebbe, nefutza dafkin. Nefutza means already made. So in other words, already beaten and combed. So here would be more like actual linen type of thing, or at least the flax that was already like purified to a much finer type of material. Oi cannabis, or cannabis is a canvas. I'm not sure how. Then they used to. It's a different type of growth. Whatever they type it, I see in the English as hemp. So it's from a a plant as well that they would use as wicks. And the reason is again, there are ones from other materials that could be not kosher, and it would be to say a little bit of a different reason. Over here, the different reason, which has to do with the fuel, would be that if it doesn't light well, then a person is going to end up playing around with it to make it better. They want to read in the middle of class, something they're not supposed to, but the light is not so good. So they're going to end up playing around with it to get stronger light so they could read better because it's not something that they should be doing. So the same thing with Shabbos, we're afraid that if the candles are not lit in a good way, a person might play around with it. And that is a big issue of Chilul Shabbos, of Mavir or other things. And therefore, obviously, we don't want that. Yes?
Actually, but on the blue topic, my bird was light blue. Like you said, bird. My bird was like, so you said that like the thingy, the flumen oil.
Yeah, but what's it blue?
Right.
Flumen is it just means flowers.
I said with the name Blue Mom.
Oh yeah.
By his name, so we were gonna name my bird Blue Mom, and I would name your Blue Me.
Okay, yeah, it's the same thing. That's the same. Okay. Next.
Oh, I resold her.
Okay, let's go. Next. Okay, that's enough. Ubdina Seinu in our countries. And again, he lived in, as we said, in Hungary, so that's where they used to do it there. Their meaning was that they would use candles that were made from chelev, which means fats. Now here he says, Well, you can't make candles out of challah. Challah doesn't burn. It's not fuel. Fats.
Scientifically generated.
So he says, and what they used to do there is they would use candles made from chalev. Now, a candle made from chalev burns beautifully. It basically means a candle, which is what we use. We don't use them made from fats, but they would. The henk shadim, and here he says it's totally kosher. In other words, you don't have to use oil. You could also use then a candle. Now, I assume candles weren't as common then in the 1700s, which is maybe why he's like explaining that it's actually kosher. Now, here they bring from the Alter Rebbe that mitzvah yoiser b'ner shel shaiva mi b'shel chalev. That if you have a choice to use a candle made from fats or a candle made from wax, and here he says beeswax, so that would be it would be preferred to use from beeswax, or wax, I should say rather wax. Now, why is that? So one reason might be, which I remember seeing somewhere, is that when you're using fats, especially so if they're kosher, so that's what we usually would call shuman, then you have to be careful that nothing drips on your milk dishes. And if it's teif, then you have to be careful that it doesn't drip on any of your dishes. So there's a certain level of weariness when you're using these non-kosher products. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe says that in a way the best thing to do would be to use it from wax. Burns just as nice, and you're never concerned of what we would call, I guess, cross-contamination with products and teif things up, etc. Now, then he says, but let's say you want to take a piece of chalev and put it inside of a keli, and then you want to put a wick inside of it. That you're not allowed to do. Now here, I want to just explain the difference between these two cases over here. The first, you're using fats in both cases, according to him. The difference is like this. In case number one, you made it into a candle. The way candles work is they're tall sticks, and they burn slowly. And as they burn, the fuel is consumed by the wick. The second case is a cup or a bowl where you put the fats inside and you light it. Like what we use today, they call them the neronim or things like that, which is basically a little glass cup, and you put the thing inside. The problem was that they were using fats. When the fats would melt, it did not get absorbed or drawn into the wick as good as it would when it was a candle. So this does not apply to our cases. Our cases are we use little glass cups. You put a candle inside, the candle taka melts, but it burns beautifully. So nowadays, this wouldn't be the same issue. But then when they were using fats burned best when they were in candle form and not when they were melted down into a liquid. The fuel wouldn't be absorbed into the wick as well. Okay? And then he says, Hamad litzara, and we'll go to the bottom in a second what the Rebbe said about this, which we quoted before. Hamad litzara sheyadlik actually achiz or berev oisei chatichas psilos hayotze min ner. The one who's lighting it has to make sure that the fire is fully grabbed, fully held by the wick before they move on. Right? Don't light it like Hanukkah. Sometimes when you're lighting it, you light it till it's a little bit because you have like 8 candles and everyone's waiting. So you light it a little bit and sometimes it'll end up going out and you go back to it and you relight it. When it comes to the Shabbos candles, don't do that. Make sure that each one lit, as we explained, you're kind of makabel Shabbos as you light them or when you fully light them. So don't go back. Don't rely on that. And the same thing would be with candles if they're being made from fats or other stuff. The same thing. You should always make sure that the fire fully ignited on the wick before you move on. So let's take a quick look at the base on the bottom, where he quotes from the Rebbe. And over here he says like this: this was also the minig by the Rabbeim that they would use a candle, not made of chela, but they would use a candle. Now he says, this is the Rebbe writing, that in the houses of the Beis Harav, they would use candles made of fats. Now again, nowadays we don't have to do that, but his point was v'lei b'shemen, not oil. And over there, the Rebbe, somewhere else, the Rebbe mentions, as we spoke about, that only Hanukkah, there was a hidur to use oil by the Rebbes. For all the other candles, I guess Havdalah, which is kind of hard to use a candle anyways, as we'll get to the halachas later, but for Havdalah and for Shabbos candles, they would be particular to use candles of some sort. Again, I don't know if that would mean that the Neronim are not included. I assume the Neronim would be the similar idea. In other words, they're just not using fats that are melted in a bowl. That would be number one. And they bring also now from Reb Moshe a more contemporary tshuva that basically nowadays regular candles they burn the best. In other words, they're perfect. So at this point, it's better even according to them. Again, we already have from Beis Hanav the minig of the Rabbeim, but even for those that didn't have that minig, because candles burn probably better in some way than fuel than oil, so that might be preferred. Again, I do see people that they have these little glass things that have a hole inside of them, and they pour in like paraffin or things like that. It's all good basically, as long that one condition would be that number one, there's no putrid smell or thing that comes out of it. It's not too flammable, so it won't chase anyone away or scare them. And number two, the light has to be good enough that you won't end up touching it in order to adjust it to make it light better. So again, in most modern fuel, you don't have that because otherwise they wouldn't sell it. They wouldn't make money if it doesn't burn well, right? A mall, they burnt whatever they could get their hands on. Nowadays, if you have a factory making it and selling it, they're not going to sell something that doesn't work because no one's going to buy it. Okay, Siv Dalet. You had a question? What? Oh, okay, Siv Dalet. You had a question? Clearly, okay.
So I was gonna when the Alter said the shall Shavim shall the Rebbe adds that in the Bishra they will use Taylor. So how does that work?
No, over there the point was, yeah. So I said I think it really depends. I have to look at exactly what they wrote. What was the minig base that I have to use? You have to know things work basically. Things worked on what you had access to. So you could have the minig base av, and then you could have what they did b'poil, and sometimes that could change. But either way, you're right. Over here, the Alter Rebbe says to use an shel shaiva for the reasons that I said. But again, the minig base av, it looks like it's what the Rebbe writes is to use an of chelev. I don't know if the implication was chelev. It could be the implication was the ner. Okay, let's go further. Down. Now you do. Okay, yeah.
Well, that's confusing, because like regular candles that aren't like kosher grade, just like regular wax.
Yes, nowadays it's not, like I said, nowadays it's not such a big topic because we have candles that burn beautifully. It wasn't always like that. Candles was basically lights. It's like you have different light bulbs, so candles were light. That's what they didn't have electricity then. So they would use anything, whatever was best. That's what they would use. They would try to do it. So therefore, you had this whole topic. For us, it's not such a big topic. Siv Dalet. So the Kitzur continues. Kfar Yedua, it's already known. And this we spoke about, so we'll just do it. It's an interesting thing, but we already went through this. We already know. Shakol ha-mitzvahs mevarech alen over la'asiyasin. Anytime it comes to mitzvah, you have to do the mitzvah before. You have to make the bracha. Before you fulfill the mitzvah, you make the bracha. Asher kidishana b'mitzvahisa lehadlik, to do something. Avabad lakas, when it comes to candle lighting by Shabbos, keeping Shabbat lakam akabelas isha Shabbos alatzma, because through lighting candles. That's how she's Makabel Shabbos. And the bracha would be the beginning of that mitzvah. So there's a little bit of a problem. If she makes the bracha first, she can't continue to light. Because in some way, she already started the mitzvah, which is her Kabbalah of Shabbos. So what should she do? Okay. She lights first. But the problem is, you're losing the benefit of what we called Iver la'asiyasan, of doing it before the mitzvah. So today, shetei bracha iveres la'asiyasan, in order that the bracha should be done before the mitzvah. So peireses yadeh keneged paneh, she puts her hands over her face, blocks her eyes. Shaloi tira aneda, she shouldn't see the candles. And then umevarecha, she makes the bracha. And then now she made the bracha. Umesira seyidayim, she moves her hands. So now she sees the candles. It will be as if she made the bracha before she lit it, because she didn't benefit from them before. And here he adds in parentheses, because of the rule of lei plug, that we like to keep things streamlined, like to keep things the same, so people don't get confused. So therefore, they would do this on Yom Tov as well. And I brought to you that there was some machlekes in how you would do it, especially if it was a man who was lighting. The Kitzur, most opinions would probably say it should be always the same. It's the easiest way to do it. If a man wants to make the bracha first, he could. But again, you don't have to. You could continue doing it the same way. Now, where are the main candles? There's a lot of candles they're going to light, like we mentioned, and a lot of reasons why they light candles. Where's the main candles that they're lighting?
Oh.
Oh, what's locked? That's for no reason. Locked it. You were falling off.
So, okay, so question we spoke about a little bit. There is a preference of which lights that you want to use. 1 second. Let's talk about that too. I just want to finish. Okay, now where is the main candles that he's accepting Shabbos with? So as we explained, based on Alter Rebbe here as well, the main ones are by the table, because as we said before, that's the Ikar Einik Shabbos, when you eat with a lot of candles, Kavod Shabbos, and probably Shalom Bayis as well, could all be fulfilled by those candles. So let's say we don't really do this because we have lights in the rest of our homes. But for them that would light candles around the home, the last candles they should light are the ones by the Suda, because as soon as she lights her official candle, she accepts Shabbos. So if she lights one in the bedroom and that was enough, that's it, she can't light anymore. So therefore, because the ones in the dining room are the main ones, make sure she lights the rest of them first, and she's not Makabel Shabbos that way. And the last ones she'll light are the ones that she's Makabel Shabbos with. Now, Shas HaTzorech, what happens if it's a time of need? For example, it's something important. Either there's a wedding, or she has to go to the mikveh, or something like that. So now it's a time issue, right? How she gets where she needs to do, and she has to be Makabel Shabbos. But if she does, she can't get there, she can't carry. Could be a lot of issues. So then, she can make a condition. The condition will be that she is lighting, but she's not being Makabel Shabbos. And as I said before, that when a person makes a Shabbos, someone has to accept Shabbos within a few minutes, and we explained that would be 10 minutes. Someone in the house has to accept Shabbos. Now, according to the Kitzur, if she would do that, then she can make a bracha first, because she's not accepting Shabbos with the lighting of the candles. What does you say for? And even if she makes it tonight, in her mind, that would be enough. She doesn't actually have to verbalize it. However, from the Alter Rebbe it says that in other words, what the Alter Rebbe is basically saying is that when you talk about a need, that there's some need that she wants to light and not be Makabel Shabbos, not so pasha. He says, in a way, it might be better for the husband to light. So, in other words, when someone says, "Oh, I want to go to," like we said before, "I want to go to the Kaisel, I want to go to the Kaisel, I want to take a taxi there. So, I want to light candles and not be Makabel Shabbos." The Alter Rebbe says it's not necessarily a good reason. You have to have a solid reason. Otherwise, the Alter Rebbe is suggesting that the husband should light, because he's not Makabel Shabbos through candles. Again, someone will have to accept it within 10 minutes. But it's easier for him to do that than for her to do that, because for her, it's almost the general Kabbalah Shabbos is with lighting candles. So it's a very high threshold to hit, that there's a need for her to take in Shabbos on it tonight. It might be better that she shouldn't light in the first place once she has to make it tonight. Okay. Thanks all for joining, and Morgan.